ideas and getting them to execution from a shopper and retail point of view. I also have with me Jad Naja, who's basically one of the experts that we have on ground in terms of media. Both of us are part of this broad function called ANI, which we call Analytics and Insights. The function's core responsibility is to really bring in new innovative platforms and solutions to ensure that we drive the business within P&G. I will also give the floor to Jad in a moment, but let me just share with you a little bit of perspective on why we are here and what this challenge is all about. So the first thing, we as P&G, I'm sure that many of you would be aware, is a big multinational company in the world. We have many of the famous brands in terms of laundry, beauty, household care, home care, and many of the portfolio is within the Middle East markets. We're one of the few top spenders when it comes down to media. I can't disclose any numbers right now, but it's one of the first or the second, depends on the year, in terms of overall spending on media is done by us. And when we actually sat down about a year ago and we were trying to figure out that what is the way to actually track the progress of everything that we're putting into the market, we have some solutions on ground, but those solutions have their own restrictions, right? So there are certain things that I will talk about, which is why we're here, and we're trying to understand if different tech-based companies can give us a tech-based solution to the overall problem statement that we have. The problem statement, talking about the overall problem statement, it's primarily the fact that we are limited and constrained in terms of understanding and tracking where our media effectiveness is going, right? So when it comes down to online or offline. So when it comes down to online, our footprint is growing very exponentially, similar to the kind of online space that you see developing in Middle East these days. Offline, we've always been strong, but again, really syncing the two platforms together, driving a solution, a simple tech-based solution that enables us to understand the tracking in terms of reach, in terms of frequency, in terms of engagement across platforms is what really we want to understand. So the problem statement is exactly what I just mentioned. Trying to understand how can we best and most effectively track media measurement in a quantitative way, and it needs to be across platforms, which is why we want to look at online as well as offline. The reason that we want to do this, and Jad will probably talk about a little more in detail about this, is look at the kind of media consumption that happens today in the world. So when you go and you turn on, when you're sitting in the lounge and you turn on Netflix, you have the Netflix going on, you have your iPad in hand, and maybe you have something else running on your computer and your smartphone. So the solution needs to be a cross-platform solution where you're really trying to understand how all these platforms come together, and the solution in terms of reach and frequency that we can come down to is something that takes into account across platform dynamics, right? There are certain agencies that are giving us tools online and offline, nothing in terms of cross platform, but separately in isolation. The issue that we have today, which is the biggest issue, is that, for example, if we're talking about offline measurements, it's primarily claimed. So what happens is the agency basically calls up different panelists in their panel and they ask them questions whether you have seen this ad or not. Now this comes from memory, and it's more claimed data versus observable data, which is something which, again, we want to go away from, and we want to really find a platform where we get actual real-time data and statistics behind whatever we're putting up in the market. So this is the one big issue that we have. The second issue is that the granularity of the data that we're getting today is not extremely granular in terms of doing analytics. So just to give you an idea, in Middle East, for example, there's a big play on ethnicities. So for example, there are, within UAE, you would find Arabs, you would find the locals, you would find expats. Within expats, you have European expats, your South Asian expats. The data that we get is on an overall level, and we're not able to break it down by really what's happening across these ethnicity groups. This is one of the examples that I'm sharing. And really, when it comes down to media, there are a lot of campaigns that not just P&G, but a lot of different FMCG markets and a lot companies and a lot of other companies cross industries are making campaigns that are targeting certain target audience, right? And we want to make sure that whatever data comes through using this solution or tech-based solution that you may end up providing to us enables us to really understand on a granular level what the performance and on key KPIs have been across these groups, these target groups that were mentioned. Either it be SEC groups that we call socioeconomic groups, or it be ethnicities, etc. So in the context of the media environment today, we are really looking for real-time quantitative measurements. We're looking at measurements that are granular, and we are looking at measurements that are cross-platform and observable. And when I say cross-platform, I mean online as well as offline. So this was just a little bit of an idea about what is the overall brief and what success looks like for us in terms of getting kind of tech-based solutions from you guys. I will pause here and I will ask Jad to share with you some of the perspective that he has. And Jad, feel free to add any perspective that you think that I've missed out, which the group should be aware of.
All right, so hello everyone. Just a quick introduction. My name is Jad. I recently joined P&G actually. I've been with them for less than a year now. And basically I'm handling media analytics for the IMEA region. So just to build on what Farhan said, it's clear that we want a cross-platform solution. So I'll tackle each platform separately, the offline and the online, and I'll take you through what exactly is needed specifically for offline, as I think it's going to be the most challenging part of the whole solution. So today, the monitoring solutions provided in our market, as Farhan mentioned, they don't give you the accurate data required to be agile when you do decision making on media investments, on spot positioning, on how to schedule, and these metrics and these tools will allow you to better position your ads on TV. So what we're missing is the granularity and the important measurements such as engagement to basically leverage these. So when we talk about TV engagement, what are we looking at exactly? So we've identified two main metrics, basically to identify if a consumer is engaged on TV or not. Basically, there's frequency and there's duration. Let's say if there's a program on TV that is a 10-episode series, and we identify that the consumer have seen at least 50% of the amount of episode, then we consider him engaged. So he watched 5 out of 10. This means the user is engaged on this program. If within one episode, he watched at least 60% of the duration, so if it's a 100-minute show, I'm saying anything, if he watched 60 minutes, then he's engaged. Now the trick about that is how to measure it, and this is where the innovation part comes into the offline measurement. There's in some markets they have tracking, visual tracking, tracking the eye movement, where the user is watching. Is it on TV? Is it on his mobile? Other solutions offer audio identification. If the ad plays on TV and the phone listens to the ad, that means the user is probably watching. If he's using the mobile at the same time, he's probably not engaged with the ad that's being shown on TV. So this is part of what we require in terms of engagement. In terms of reach and frequency measurement on TV, the data comes in very late. So typically, for example, now we're in May. The April data for how the ratings are coming in today's methodology will come in typically in 17th of May. So it would be already too late to take action on whatever is not going right. if it's a reach issue or a frequency issue. So this is why we're looking at a solution that is more agile, that is more you know, valid and available on a daily basis, and even less than daily if possible. Now, to tackle the online part of it, currently what we have is the publisher's own dashboard to measure reach and frequency. So if you launch a digital campaign on YouTube, you get one number. If you launch the same creative or the same campaign that's already on TV and YouTube on Facebook, you'll get a different reach number. So we're looking at a consolidated online measurement that is also paired with the offline measurement. So in total, you'll get a holistic view on how your campaign is doing and how it's being measured. So this is in short what we're looking at. Farhan, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, so if you move on to the next slide, I think that's where the perspective is right for me. The beginning of this solution is primarily going to be Middle East. So the scope that we're talking about is primarily Middle East right now. The reason is that there are methodologies that exist around the world. So within North America, we're following a certain very rigorous methodology, which allows us to do exactly what we're doing. There are certain Asia Pacific countries where we're able to do the same thing. But for some reason, companies have not been able to crack a solution here in Middle East. And I think this is also very exciting for you guys, because you might be the first ones actually coming up with a solution like this, which everybody over here is actually hungry to get. There's a lot of discussion amongst FMCGs, and not even just FMCGs, but across industries, on what would be the right methodology or solution, or what would be the right company to partner with when it comes down to media effectiveness measurement, right, from a quantitative standpoint. So it's exciting, but at the same time, it's quite challenging as well, because from a regulation point of view, we want to make sure that whatever solution that you pitch is legally and from a regulation-based valid, right? So that was one of the success criteria that we have clearly mentioned within our application on the application website as well. So this is just one of the things that we want to talk about. We are very open to piloting this in one country versus the other. So when we say Middle East is the scope, we don't expect that you would come back to us and give us a solution across all countries in Middle East. We know that there's a lot of complexity attached to it. But if there is a solution that you want to pitch to us, which we eventually discuss and we talk it out, and we feel that there is merit in terms of piloting it, we pilot in one market and we see how it goes, and then we can basically scale it up. So that's the eventual outcome of what we expect out of this. Now, I think we've said a lot. We've put in the brief. We've talked about what is the problem statement and business question that we are trying to address. I think what we would love to hear from you are questions. I know maybe there would be some clarifications that are required. I would really encourage you to speak to us, ask us if there's any questions and clarifications that are needed. And we would love to engage with you, not in just call only, but also moving forward.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys. That was really comprehensive. What I'll do is I'll just talk a little bit more about the selection process, and then I'll open it up for Q&A from the audience. So basically, like we said, there's going to be a written application, and then a phone/Zoom interview, and then there's going to be a selection process that's going to be done between us and Procter & Gamble. And then the fourth stage is the onboarding of the selected companies, and then basically organizing the logistics of that, and then hosting the teams here for as long as it's feasible for the challenge. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Farhan, but the focus of since the focus of the challenge is going to be in MENA, the teams will likely spend a lot of time in Dubai versus other regions, or would it differ?
Correct.
Okay. That's it, guys. That's it from us. We'll open it up for questions now from the audience. If you can just type in your questions in the chat, and then
I think we have good time as well. I think we We have 30 minutes, so it's great. So
Yeah,
let's
exactly.
bring the questions in.
Exactly. So I'll just take the questions from the Q&A section.
Okay.
Then I'll shoot them over to you guys. First question is, what does the ideal company look like for you guys? Particularly, at what stage are you looking at the company to be at? Is it at the early POC stage, or are you looking for something that is, that already exists, has some kind of market traction, or are you looking for, on more on the scale up side of things?
Yeah, that's a good question. So let me take this one, Jad, and you can build on the perspective there. So when it comes down to different companies, we're not really discriminating at all when it comes down to what stage they're in. What we're looking for is an idea, and what we're looking for is an idea that can be executed, right? So these are the two basic parameters that we want to start engaging with. So if there is an idea, so basis whatever we've talked in terms of the problem statement, that number one, it needs to be granular, it needs to be statistical and quantitative, it needs to be aligned with your legal and regulatory alignments. And if there is a solution, and it needs to be a cross-platform, that's the big one that we have. So it needs to be online as well as offline tracking. If there's a solution that you pitch which falls within these four parameters and is executable, then we definitely have something on our hands. That's all that we're looking for at this point in time. If you have an existing solution where you're doing something like this in some other market, you're absolutely welcome to talk to us about doing so. The only thing we want to talk about at that point in time, the first question would be whether we can actually execute this in Middle East or not. That's the first question. If the answer to that question is yes, then we work towards understanding what needs to be true in order to do the execution here. If the solution is good and PNG can help in any way because of the scale that it has, we would love to do that as well. So it's just a matter of finding a very good idea that falls within the space of the parameters that we talked and is executable within Middle East. These are the three big points that we look for when it comes down to the overall assessment of the company.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, another question coming in. What are the best measures of social media or online advertising campaigns in your view? Also, is it good to repeat the same campaigns on a yearly basis?
Jad, would you like to take this one? You're on mute, Jad.
Sorry, Joe, you're on mute, Jad.
I'm not hearing very well. Could you repeat the question?
Sure. So the question is, what are some of the best measurements for social media or online advertising campaigns in your view? And would it be a good practice to repeat the same campaigns on a yearly basis?
Okay. So it actually depends on the objective of the campaign we're measuring. So it could be, if you're doing an awareness campaign, you would look at reach, you would look at efficiency metrics like cost per CPM or cost per view. It really depends on what you're looking at in terms of campaign objective. But sorry, this is another question. Yeah, the second part of the question regarding what was it exactly?
Whether it needs to
part
be
of the question is, would it be good to repeat the same campaign on a yearly basis?
On a yearly basis, I mean, I don't know. It really depends on the brand strategy, but ideally it's not recommended because usually there's differentiation and innovation that happens throughout the year on the product itself, on the communication, and we tend not to keep the same message. Like there is one brand message that is being delivered about one major characteristic, but usually when we're innovating the products, our products, which is a process that we do throughout the year, we tend to also modify our communication and campaign executions as well.
So just to build on this point, let me also share my perspective. So the first one, what is the measures that you should actually look at social media. Well, I would not really look at social media in isolation, but I would, when I talk about social media, I would talk about online as general, right? Like Jared was talking about, it really depends on the overall success criteria that you've set up for the campaign going in. So, for example, many of P&G brands go in with the campaign idea of driving awareness. So, like Jared was talking about, there are other cases where you would want to drive penetration of a certain lineup that you're launching in the market, or certain news that has come on the brand. So you want people to be aware, but at the same time, you would want to drive penetration within the market itself, or a certain group of target audience that you have. So when it comes down to the KPIs, reach and frequency are typically the two KPIs that fall across the board that you need to track. It's there. But on top of that, then there are certain strategic KPIs that come in, which are in line with the kind of campaign objective that you have in mind. And it could be penetration, it could be awareness, it could be tracking overall views on YouTube, tracking on Facebook, what the kind of comments that you're getting. So also from a social listening point of view, this is where social listening becomes critical as well. So really trying to understand how the conversation is going around the overall campaign that you're doing. Secondly, on the point of actually doing this year on year, again, the reason that we don't stick to one campaign is not because we completely want to do something new. The environment is very dynamic, right? So the product that you're launching today, or the variants of the product that you're launching today, might not be valid next year. Maybe we, as P&G, we believe heavily on driving innovation. So we bring in almost on a yearly basis new innovative product streams within the category or within the brand that comes into the market. When it comes down and hits the market, we want to also drive certain level of awareness with using that objective in mind, right? So it really depends where you are as an organization. What is your strategy in terms of what you want to gain out of the communication that you're setting across the market? So we as P&G, we drive everything from an innovation standpoint. So we look at year-on-year innovation streams, and we link our campaign based on that. And which is why it becomes absolutely mandatory to, while we are being consistent in the message track that we're putting in. So for example, just to give you an idea, Ariel is a very big brand that we have, right? On Ariel, within our markets, you would see that you would see the claim that we have of one wash, so which is basically the one single consistency that we have across, that we drive in terms of product superiority, right? But alongside, there are other strategic information or campaigns that we launch, which puts in certain message track that we want to drive within the market. It could be anything. It could be the fact that we have recently launched Ariel Pods, which is a completely new innovative product line by itself, right? So many of you must have seen it, that it's not the detergent powder or the liquid gel. We've also launched a tablet on top of it. So when we launched it, we had a campaign that we ran to educate the people, to drive awareness amongst the people on how to use it, what's the benefit of it. So it really depends on the strategy of the brand, and it depends, and it varies on year basis that strategy.
Okay. Another question is around the current travel restrictions. So I think I'm echoing on technology. Considering the current travel restrictions, would you start the collaboration with the startups once they can travel to Dubai, or would the collaboration take place virtually and online?
Yes. So honestly, I don't believe that traveling would be a barrier to this, because we are very open to actually communicating virtually on this. So I've been communicating virtually on a lot of different topics with a lot of different markets and companies sitting at home because we've been in lockdown. So I understand that it's been a little strategically difficult for us to manage this, but the initial start of sharing of ideas need to be virtual, because that's the time when we're actually trying to understand what ideas do we have on the table, which ones out of those ideas would work, and we want to really partner on. And this is something that I think in the end, Ghaith will also mention what the process is going to look like. The reason that we have the application process in hand is while we receive a lot of different applications from different companies, we want to understand what are the overall solutions looking like. And based on that application itself, it gives us an idea or an indication on whether we think that we want to partner on such measures, on such solutions that fall within the success criteria or not. If it falls within the success criteria and we have questions, we will basically use Ghaith's help and we'll bother him in terms of driving a connect between us and that company. We'll ask some questions to clarify what exactly they mean by the solution that they've presented. The company I'm sure would have several questions as well when it comes down to us. So that will be the connection, which is the early POC stage where we're sharing ideas and we lock on the idea after some communication. Once that is done and we're really getting into the execution phase of it, that's when I think we will figure out what needs to be done. And we'll cross the bridge when it comes down to that. But for now, the important part is that we connect virtually. What is more important is to understand what is the solution and ideas that you guys have that you want to share with us that fall within the criteria that we expect. That's the short-term objective, if I were to say.
Okay. Another one is, sorry, what? I just asked someone to mute their mics. Okay, thanks. Would this type, sorry, let me just go over the full question. What kind of measurements are you looking for in outdoor advertising? That's the first part. And the second part, do you think airport advertising would enhance the brand equity with some innovative and interactive activations? In Saudi, for example, we see few 3D giant objects on the road. Is that something that P&G might look at to stand out?
Jad, you want to take this? I can share my opinion on this. Outdoor is something that we're not looking for right now. I can tell you that for sure. What we're focusing our efforts on is towards TV, which is the conventional way of advertising, and we're looking at digital. These are the two big ones that we are focusing all our efforts towards. And even from a P&G strategy point of view, this is in line with what we want to do. Not to say that out of home is not important. It varies by country, to be honest. So I've been doing my job in the analytics department for the past 11 years. I can tell you that it varies very heavily across markets in terms of effectiveness. And there are certain markets which tell you that I don't want to spend anything on outdoor advertising, that there are certain markets which would tell you that I would, given a choice, I would reach the maximum reach using outdoor advertising. So the opinions are out there. They're varied in terms of market realities and dynamics. For this purpose, where we are right now, we focus our efforts on TV and digital. Jad, do you want to add something to it, or you think that's a comprehensive answer?
So I think it's pretty comprehensive. If you want, I'll skip to the second part. The question is, do you think airport advertising would enhance the brand equity with some innovative and interactive activation? So again, this will come to the brand strategy and the brand itself, because it depends on our categories. Some products don't really fall into the traveling category, so airport wouldn't be the right place to advertise there. But I don't know, I would think of probably Oral-B or Crest would fall into these brands who would, advertise there. But it really depends on the brand strategy again. So in Saudi, for example, we see few 3D giants objects. Is that something that P&G might look at to stand out? So again, we see a lot of, creative outdoor advertising, but I think for P&G, what matters the most is the message that's being delivered. It could be a simple billboard with a powerful message, and it will give us the objective that we want. So 3D giant objects on the road are cool to look at if it allows the message to be delivered strongly.
I think the one thing that to talk about is primarily disruption. So whatever you do in terms of driving any kind of campaign message throughout in terms of communication, the rule of the game is disruption. So for example, if you're looking at certain markets and you try to do some assessment on measuring effectiveness on a quantitative level, you would see that on an ad on TV, you would have like a 30-second ad coming in and you would see that out of the 15 minutes or 10 minutes break that you have between the episodes or the actual TV content, there are ads that are jammed up in place in next back to back to each other, right? In those markets, which are primarily your what we call HFS markets, like traditional trade markets like India, Pakistan, Egypt, where the environment is so cluttered, it's extremely difficult for your ad to stand out, which is why what Jad is saying becomes very important, that your message track needs to be very, very powerful. So that's why we follow very heavily and rigorously on the message track, and we try to understand what is that one thing that will resonate the most with the consumer and is something that the consumer wants to hear. And that's what we make our ads on. Now, when it comes to Saudi, your big objects on the road, if the companies who are doing it are driving that objective of disruption, if they feel that that's the case, then by all means. But at the same time, again, it depends really heavily on the kind of objective that you have, and that's where you guys also come in, right? To assess the effectiveness, and that's the idea. So if we launch certain digital campaign and we want to understand what's the effectiveness of that, we want to understand it on basis of both online and offline together. That's where we want to drive synergies.
Okay. Then a question around, and there's a link in that question. Would this type of 3D viewer be useful to P&G for their online marketing? So guys, if you just take 30 seconds maybe to look at that, and then I'll jump on to the next question and maybe we can come back to this one. The other question is, what are some of the trends or shifts in advertising or brands that you've observed with that have been impacted or that came out as a result of COVID-19? Hagar, I'm just trying to relate this question to the challenge. So Farhan, basically, how would these trends change the criteria that we have for the challenge or the scope that we have for the challenge, if they do?
So our overall scope and success criteria remains the same, irrespective of the COVID crisis coming in. So our objective is to understand solutions where, like I said, we can measure effectiveness online and offline. Now, that said, we are still in the process of understanding many things when it comes down to how COVID has impacted the overall trends. I can tell you for sure, online has exploded across markets, particularly even in markets like UAE and Saudi and Middle East, where already the penetration was high. We're seeing a lot of consumption happening on media, a lot of it. And I'm sure that you would be able to resonate with this, right? The amount of viewership or viewing time on digital, be it Netflix, be it on Facebook, be it on YouTube, that you are getting now by staying at home because you don't have anything else to do, it's massive. So that's the one trend that we are clearly seeing happening in the market now. Whether it's going to continue, whether it's going to open new platforms on an online digital space, we're not sure yet. It's still early stages, as you would know. But this exposure will definitely last for a few months at least. So linking it back to why we are here in terms of understanding the solutions, our solution criteria and brief remains the same. Nothing changes. In fact, it becomes more important because what we're trying to do is linking and driving synergy between offline and online instead of looking at this in isolation. So that overall objective is even more critical now than ever.
Okay, makes sense. Another question, which is related to the previous link that was there. That's an editor that internal marketing teams and agencies can easily make 3D and VR experiences for the websites, online ads, etc. So if you have time to look at that before we hang up. Guys, any more questions that you want to look at? We covered everything in the text in the chat box. From the attendees, are there any more questions? If not, we can wrap this up and we can start posting this online so you can go over it again. Okay, another one is, how can we benefit from sponsors in our ads on social media?
How can we benefit from sponsors in our ads? I don't understand the question.
Yeah, Haga, can you relate this to the challenge, please? It's not very clear.
I think this is related to the commercials later, in case, like, is it promoting the company itself through PNG?
Okay, guys, no more questions from the audience. If you want to go back to that link that Alan posted and just give your views on it, just before we wrap up.
For some reason, I'm not able to open this. Jad, were you able to open this?
Yeah,
link?
I can. So I see a floating 3D Tide bottle. Yeah. Looks
guys,
cool, but
I'm not sure whether this helps with the challenge, right? So from a media effectiveness measurement point of view, like, it looks cool. I'm able to open it. It's great. But I think the topic that we have on hand is primarily on understanding what are the solutions that we can do in terms of measurement, rather than the advertisement itself.
is there any questions on the mechanics, of TV engagement? How would you imagine tracking that, or online engagement?
So I would again just reiterate the objective of what we want to achieve out of this, right? So advertisements or making campaigns and making advertisements is not what we're looking for. At this point in time, we're looking for ways to measure that. So existing campaigns and existing ads that we have, what can we do, or what is the best tech-based solution that you can provide to us, which will enable us to track the effectiveness of it. And like we talked in the beginning, effectiveness would be in terms of reach, frequency, engagement across platforms. So it's more about the tracking of the advertisement and campaign versus actual development of it that we're looking for. And guys, I know that we may be short on time, but feel free, if you have any questions, please let us know through Red. He has my contact information, and Jad's as well. Please let us know. We are here to explain and clarify whatever you want. Again, like I said, we are happy to have such a session again if needed to help clarify the solution that you want to pitch to us. So don't feel that this is the only time that you will be able to connect with us.
Correct. I'm going to post the link to the challenge right now to all the panelists and attendees. The deadline for this challenge is the end of this month, May 31st. So we'll be reviewing more applications as they come through. If we need to increase the time, we'll discuss that with PNG and the team, and then we'll get back to everybody and we'll announce them. Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Ved, for hosting this. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
And I hope that this was helpful for everybody and all the audience members. And do let us know if there's anything that we can do in terms of driving more clarity. We would love to engage.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate your time. Have a good one and stay safe. Thank you.
Same. Thank you. Bye-bye.